Welcome to this webinar on the American Occupational Therapy Association's Fieldwork Performance Evaluations, or FWPE 2020 version. This webinar will focus on the administration of the Fieldwork Performance Evaluation. The objectives of the webinar: 1. Identify the item content areas and what is new in the Fieldwork Performance Evaluations 2020 version. 2. Understand the instructions for administration of the FWPE. And 3, recognize some of the challenges in evaluating students' competency in fieldwork settings. Item content areas and what is new in the 2020 version of the FWPE. The major themes identified in the revisions leading to the current tools. Items were revised to ensure relevance to the variety of practice settings, removing overlapping and redundant items, reducing lengthy item statements, removing double and triple-barreled item statements, alignment between the occupational therapy student and the occupational therapy assistant student items, and further alignment of the current AOTA documents and contemporary practice. As a result of the revisions to the tool, the 2020 version of the Occupational Therapy Students Fieldwork Performance Evaluation saw a reduction of 5 items from 42 in 2002 to 37 in 2020. As a result, the passing score changed from 122 in 2002 to 111 or higher in 2020. For the Occupational Therapy Assistant Fieldwork Performance Evaluation, there was an increase of 6 items from 25 in 2002 to a total of 31 items in the 2020 version. As a result, the passing score changed from 70 or higher in 2002 to 91 or higher in 2020. In addition to revisions and changes in the actual items, the entire rating scale was also changed. The scale remains on a score of 1 to 4. On the new scale, 4 represents exemplary practice or substantial breadth and depth in understanding and/or skillful application of fundamental knowledge and skills. A score of 3, or proficient performance, is scored for adequate understanding and/or application of fundamental knowledge and skills. A score of 2, emerging performance, is applied when there is limited understanding and/or application of fundamental knowledge and skills, displaying some gaps or inaccuracies. And finally, a score of 1, unsatisfactory performance, when the student demonstrates inadequate understanding and/or application of fundamental knowledge and skills, demonstrating significant gaps or inaccuracies. The same rating scale is used for both the Occupational Therapy Assistant tool and the Occupational Therapy Student tool. Items are organized in both tools in 6 categories. The first category is fundamental of practice. The 3 items on both the OT and the OTA tools focus on ethics and safety. Both tools reflect updated language for currency of practice, and in the case of the OTA tool, greater alignment to those items on the Occupational Therapy Students tool. The second category is basic tenets of practice. For the Occupational Therapy Student tool, the items are combined from 4 to 3 items and the language updated to reflect current practice and documents. The Occupational Therapy Assistant tool includes 3 items with major revisions in those items to better align with the language in the Occupational Therapy Students tool. The third category is screening and evaluation. For the Occupational Therapy Students tool, the items were reduced from 10 to 9 items, with major changes to reflect updated language and practice. The Occupational Therapy Assistant tool has 5 items, again with major changes in the language to reflect updated practice and documents of the association. All of the language in both of these, the OT and the OTA students tool, focuses on the new framework language. The next category is intervention. There are 9 items on the Occupational Therapy Students tool, with major changes reflecting updated language and practice on all items. In the case of the Occupational Therapy Assistant tool, there was an increase from 6 to 7 items, reflecting updated language and practice areas. Management of occupational therapy services. The number of items on the Occupational Therapy Students tool was reduced from 5 to 4 items. Again, there were changes reflecting current framework and practice language. In the case of occupational therapy assistants, this is a new section on their FWPE with 4 items added. The items are in alignment with those in the Occupational Therapy Students FWPE tool. The final section combines what were previously 2 separate categories on the 2002 tools, those of communication and professional behaviors. They are now combined into one category. In the case of the occupational therapy students assessment, there was an overall reduction from 11 to 9 items. The language used in the new items again reflect the current framework and practice. On the case of the occupational therapy assistant tool, there was an increase from 8 to 9 total items, and you will notice better alignment with the occupational therapy students tool in the items in this section. Instructions for administering the performance evaluations, or the FWPE, for the occupational therapy and occupational therapy assistant students 2020 version. Fieldwork educators and students can gain access to the Fieldwork performance evaluation through an emailed unique link provided by the academic program. The evaluation tool can be accessed using any device with web access, including smartphones, tablets, or computers. For information on the website is available at aota.org/educationcareers/fieldwork/performance evaluations. The FWPE is designed to measure entry-level competence, differentiate the competent student from the incompetent student, and measure the performance of the student on the established learning objectives for the fieldwork placement. The tool is not designed to differentiate levels above entry-level competence. In addition, it is not designed to measure the specific occupational therapy task in isolation. The midterm review. At the time of the midterm review, the student completes a self-evaluation using the FWPE midterm form. The Fieldwork educator completes an evaluation of the student's competencies using the Fieldwork performance evaluation midterm form. The student and Fieldwork educator meet to review the scores and to receive feedback. And then finally, the midterm review is submitted online. Some basics. The midterm review shall include qualitative feedback, the comments box available after each item in the tool. The feedback comments are equally important to the numerical scores and should be, wherever possible, provide examples of performance related to the established learning objectives for the fieldwork placement. In addition to the qualitative feedback, there are quantitative feedback or scoring items. All items must be scored using this scale that was previously explained, from 1 unsatisfactory performance to a high of 4 exemplary performance. Midterm review basics. The midterm review process should establish the expectations for a plan which would enable the student to achieve entry-level competence by the end of the fieldwork experience. This plan should include specific objectives and enabling activities to be used by the student and fieldwork educator in order to achieve the desired competence. Interpretation of performance should consider both the qualitative, the comments or feedback, and the quantitative, the scores, in determining the student's potential for achieving entry-level competence by the end of the affiliation. The fieldwork educator and student should contact the school if a student exhibits unsatisfactory behavior or scores a 1 in a substantial number of tasks, the student receives a score of 1 or 2 on any of the fundamentals of practice. Those are the safety and ethics items in the first section of the tool, and/or a student's potential for achieving entry-level competence by the end of the affiliation is in question. Things to know. The fieldwork educator and the students can save a PDF of the full midterm evaluation. All demographic and numerical scores from the midterm will automatically populate the final evaluation form, but the comments will not. A unique link will be emailed before the final evaluation needs to be submitted. The final review. Process. Students complete the self-evaluation using the Fieldwork Performance Evaluation Final. The Fieldwork Educator completes the evaluation of the student's competencies using the Fieldwork Education Final. The student and Fieldwork Educator meet to review the scores and feedback. The final review is submitted online with electronic signatures. The final review will include qualitative feedback or the comments box. Where at all possible, they should provide examples of performance related to the established learning objectives for the fieldwork placement. In addition, there will be the quantitative feedback or the scoring. All items must be scored to receive a pass on the final fieldwork performance evaluation. A score of 3 or higher on the fundamentals of practice, safety, and ethics items will be required to receive a pass on the final fieldwork performance evaluation. Scores of 1 on any items is not allowed to receive a pass on the final fieldwork performance evaluation. In the case of the occupational therapy assistant students, the sum score or the total score must be 91 or higher to receive a pass. And for OT students, the sum score must be 111 or higher in order to receive a pass on the FWPE. It is important to note that the final evaluation is a report of the findings from the fieldwork educator to the academic program. The ultimate decision to determine pass-fail rests with the academic institution. The halo effect. The halo effect was first defined by Thorndike in the 1920s. The halo effect is an error in reasoning in which an impression is formed from a positive single trait or characteristic is allowed to influence the multiple judgments or rating on unrelated factors. For example, it would be the concept of she's good at this, then she's probably good at that too, and the same rating is applied throughout the scale. The Horns effect. The Horns effect is the opposite of the halo effect. The Horns effect is where there's a tendency for a single negative attribute to cause the raters to mark everything low on the low end on the scale. The strategies to overcome both the Horns and the halo effect are to 1. Be conscious of your own judgments, 2. Give first impressions a second chance, and 3. Avoid negative or positive generalizations about the student. Leniency and strictness bias. This is pretty much as the terms would indicate. Rater is lenient is going too easy on the person when they are rating. That means the scores will be very high. A rater is going too hard on the student they are rating causes all scores to be very low. The strategies to prevent leniency and strictness bias were to be objective, consistent, and follow the rating scale criteria as written. The similar to me effect. The list of possible similarities is huge. Similarities in age, gender, race, and experience all affect ratings. Even similar work habits, similar attributes, or similar personalities lead to inflated ratings. Again, the strategy to prevent a similar to me effect in your scoring would to be objective, consistent, and follow the rating scale criteria. Implicit bias, probably one of the hardest targets. Implicit bias is the unconscious attitudes and stereotypes we all hold about different groups of people that influence our actions. Operating outside of our conscious awareness, the implicit associations we form through a lifetime of direct and indirect messages about groups of people can cause us to have unconscious attitudes about people based on characteristics like race, ethnicity, and gender. Whether we realize it or not, these associations, positive or negative, can influence our behavior and ratings when assessing students. It should be noted everyone has implicit biases. The strategies would be to learn more about implicit biases. One good resource is linked to this webinar. Secondly, take the time to understand your own implicit biases. And thirdly, be objective, consistent, and follow the rating scale criteria. Further information on the FWPE is available on the AOTA website at the following link. You will also find available on this page PDF copies of the items on both the OT and the OTA student tools. In order to contact or provide any further information, please use the email address academicaffairs@aota.org. Thank you for taking the time to review this webinar.